Hello. Today I'm going to show you how to bind events in jQuery. I'm going to show you the way that I like to do it. So here's my form. It's not too important. I've got some paragraphs, I've got some buttons, I've got some form fields, got some forms. And so down here in between some script tags, and in these introductory videos I always like to point up at the top and say, hey look, see this link here? That's my link to the jQuery library. jQuery I need a reference to it on the page, otherwise I can't use jQuery. So if you get some weird errors like $sign is not defined, which is one that you could get, that would mean that you don't have jQuery. But if you got jQuery, let me show you how to select some elements and bind some events to them. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to bind an event to this button here. Now this button has an ID of mystery. So in my previous video I showed you how to select things using jQuery selectors. So the first thing I'm going to do is select that button. So in here, it's an ID, right? So an ID means I'm talking pound signs, and then the name of the ID. So that's how I select that button. I just selected it by its ID. And what I want to do is I'm going to call this function, which is click, which means I'm attaching a click event to this thing. Now click is a function, so I open up a parenthesis because it's a function. And what I'm going to do in here is it's hard to say. I mean, what this is called is a function literal, or an inline function, or an anonymous function. Normally when you think about a function call, you pass it an argument. In this case, you're passing it a function, is the way you should think about that. This function, in this case, doesn't have any arguments. I'm going to open up a curly brace, which is what you always do when you're defining the scope of a function. I always go enter, just to give myself some room. I close that curly brace, and you can see with syntax highlighting or tag matching, you can see that that goes to that. Now the super weird thing is, I need to do a parenthesis after it, which should go against all your instincts, because how often do you have a parenthesis outside of a curly brace? That usually means you've done something wrong, but in this case it doesn't. You see how that matches with that? So I do have an opening and closing set of curly braces inside of these parentheses, and I also have another empty set of parentheses here. It's a lot to look at, and it's painful. That semicolon is just the cherry on top. But what you're going to be doing if you're working with anonymous functions like this, in this context, you are going to write that, and that's going to be a curly brace, a parenthesis, and a semicolon. If that feels awkward, it should feel awkward, but let me show you again. The curly brace goes from there to there. The parenthesis does contain that curly brace, and then that's just the end of the statement. So that is the worst part of this whole thing. So I have now, I guess I have attached a click event to this mystery ID, element with an ID of mystery. What does it do? Well, let's make it do something. So let's say when you click this, I want to add a red border to all the paragraphs. Let's say that's what I want to do. So what I would do is select the paragraphs. Now, if I want to select all the paragraphs, I'd select them by tag type, like that, and I'd say add class, and I think I said I was going to do red. It doesn't matter what I said, I'm doing something. So when you click on the thing with an ID of mystery, it's going to add a class of red to all the paragraphs. That's the way you read that. It's only 3 lines, but it's pretty messy. You got a whole bunch of stuff nested in a whole bunch of stuff. Head over here, refresh, click my mysterious button, and there are my there's my classes that I set. I have the console open. I can't recommend that enough. If I managed to make a mistake, I would hear about those mistakes down there. Like I don't know. How about this? Like let's say I forget to treat that thing like a string. I don't exactly know what that's gonna do. Something like that though, right? P is not defined. My point is the console, you should use it. I try and harp on that, just like I try and harp on that, because those are the kind of things that are going to get you hung up when you're just starting. All right, so that's how you attach an event, right? That's a click event. Let me do one more, and I'm going to use it to illustrate a slightly different thing. So let's say this is super weird, but let's say I want to put a click event on P1. Now you notice I'm just doing click events, and you might be wishing I did other events and telling you other events aren't going to work any differently. I mean, it's not any harder, it's not any easier, it's just a different event. Click is the thing that's easiest to illustrate. There's blur, there's focus, there's change, there's a whole world of events. They just don't make great demonstrations in my opinion, so I'm doing click events. I'm telling you, it doesn't work any different. So I'm selecting something with an ID of P1. I'm saying when you click on that thing, I want to, so anonymous function call, open curly brace, enter, closing curly brace, closing parenthesis, semicolon, right? It's that weird pattern. If you want to click on them and just make sure they match, you can. It's not a bad idea. Now here what I want to illustrate is something called this. Now, I don't even want to try and explain it because it's very hard to explain because I keep using words like this and that. But so let's say, so before I do that, let me show you the kind of clumsy way of doing it, and I'll show you a better way of doing it. So let's say when you click on P1, I want to change the class of P1. So I could reselect it again, like this. I mean, right, this is not hard. One of the coolest things about jQuery is how easy it is to select something. That was pretty painless. And then I'll go add class, and then if I want this to actually show up, let's do blue. So I'm saying when you click on P1, give it a class of blue. Pretty weird to think about attaching a click event to something that's not a button, you know, like an H1 on a page, but you can do whatever you want. You can attach things to all kinds of things. So I click on that, and it does that, right? It's okay. It works. That works. Now, what I want to show you is you notice, so the whole scope of this function call right here, it's all related to this P1. So when you attach an event to an element, inside this set of curly braces from here to here, I don't need to say that this is referencing P1. I can just say this, and notice that is not a string. That is a reference to the calling thing. So it's a reference to the element that this function is bound to. It's hard to explain, especially because I can't explain it without saying this and that in the same sentence. But that's just a shorthand way, if you will, to do the same thing, right? I get the same thing out of it. I just didn't have to write the selector. I could just say this. This is how you reference the current instance of the thing that you are dealing with. Now that doesn't help me at all. If I want to say you click on P1, I don't even know if this is a worthwhile example, but I'm doing it anyways. Let's say I wanted you to click on P1 and that's going to put a border on P2. Does that make sense? No, not really, but right, this is only useful for referencing the thing that I'm talking about. If I want to style something else, or it doesn't help me with that. Right? Why would I ever do that? That's just confusing. But if what you're addressing is the thing that the function is bound to, then you can use the word this. Now, this actually pops up in other contexts as well, so it's not only for this events and anonymous function situation. It's for other similar functions where the scope references the thing that you're currently dealing with. It's hard to explain, especially in introductory terms. So now you know how to bind events to elements. Thanks for watching.